Hello everyone, welcome back. In the last sessions, we have understood how to create the tables in Laravel using the migrations. The benefit was that your project will keep the track of all the database changes that you are going to do, and it would be easy to create the tables, roll back, right? Suppose you are deploying some project and you found that there is some issue being raised and you want to roll back. So instead of going to the database and manually dropping the column changes and other stuff, we can run the rollback command. So rollback will roll it back to the previous batch of migrations. So that was one benefit we saw, and we saw it was very clean, and you don't have to bother about telling each and every developer that okay, these are the changes, or going and sharing up the database changes, because everything is inside the application itself, and whenever we are committing it to our git versioning, all the changes will also be committed to the git repository. Okay, so now tables were created and we want to save the data inside the tables. For example, the post, we have created the post table and now we want to save some data inside this post table. We are not going to worry about the user handling part over here. This is simple, a post table. You can see there is no user ID column. So our main purpose is to understand how to save the data, right? The project will come later. We'll manage up all the primary key, foreign key. So let's come back to the source code and understand how to save the data inside the database. Now you can save the data inside the database through PHP by using MySQLi code, or you can use the PHP data objects, but still you will have to do a lot of work. I'm presenting up a small snippet of MySQLi and PHP data objects. We'll not execute it. We'll just have a quick look how much code we have to write. So first of all, you need to initialize up your database variables, credentials. You are going to create a connection, and you have to obviously check the connection, whether the connection is created or not, whether the database was available or not, right? And after that, you are going to write the SQL statement. Now at this point, if you are writing up the raw SQL statement, means you should be having some good SQL knowledge. And then you have to run that SQL statement and check whether your SQL statement has executed successfully or was there some SQL error, and you have to handle that error. Above everything, you have to then manage the connection. You should close the connection. If you are not managing the connection, or you are not closing the connection, possibly the connection will be kept open for some time, and let's say if more of the connections are kept open for some time, that is going to reduce the performance of your application, because your database is busy with a lot of opened connections. So this here you are going to use the MySQLi driver, right? But it has a limitation. This is only going to work with the MySQL database, MySQL server. Now suppose if I want to work with Postgres or some other database server, so in that case we can use the PHP data objects. PHP data objects are also going to provide you very similar kind of structure. You have to initialize up the PDO object with the credentials. You are going to create up some SQL statement, execute it, and if there are any exceptions, they would be handled inside the catch block, like there is any PDO exception, right? But remember, if I am going to write up few applications, like I'm working on few projects, in every project I have to do similar sort of work. I have to write up the connection, write the SQL statement, handle the exception. So Laravel has included up a library, Eloquent, which is a object relational mapping library, and that library is going to manage up all these work. It is going to create the connection. We don't have to bother about the connection, right? It is going to create the connection. It is going to manage it. So if the user has, let's say, closed, the query is completed and the result is returned to the client, the connection would be managed. It would be reused by some other client, right? So that all work is going to be done by that library Eloquent. Now if Eloquent is there, what are we going to do in that case, right? What are we going to write? Are we going to write up all the SQL statements, raw SQL statements? So answer is no. We don't have to write up a lot of SQL statements also, because that Eloquent library is going to provide us some methods, right? PHP methods, and at the background it would be doing up a lot of work, and we have to manage our database table with the help of the models. So we don't need to go for MySQLi, we don't have to go for the PDO. All these things are happening in the background done by the Laravel and that library. All we need to do is we need to create a model which will be mapped with the table. Okay, now what is a model? Let's look at, is there a default model given in Laravel? So you go to the app folder, and inside that you find the models folder where you have the user.php file. So this user is a default model given because if you remember, we had the migration for the users table. So mapped to the users table, they have created a user model, right? And it has kept some fields. We are keeping the fields infillable. I'll discuss about it later. And some casting, like if there is an email verified at column, it is casted into the data type. Now I want to create my own my own model, because I want to save the data inside the post table, right? So user model will not be mapped with the post table. User model is mapped with the users table. Okay, so let's go and create a new model. To create the new model, we can again use the command terminal, and here we can run the command php artisan make model. Give the name of the model post. Now there is a convention. If your table is post in the plural form, right, your model should be in the singular form. And always ensure that the class name should be in the Pascal case, so that the first letter of every word is uppercase. Okay, I have seen people making it post in the lowercase form and then keep on utilizing it, and they start writing up a lot of variables etc. to manage up this mismatch of the naming convention, right? So always good that if you match the naming convention, post. So command is php artisan make model post. Let's run this, and it will be created inside the app models folder. So here is your post model. Now by default, this post model will be mapped with the post table of the database, right? You don't have to mention, and you don't have to tell Laravel that, okay, this is the post model, please map it with the database table post. No, it is not required. But yes, suppose if my table name was a bit in a different way, not a post, they sometimes, like the very large scale application or banking application I've seen, they keep their table name with some prefix, then underscore, xyz underscore, some short name, right, then suffix. So they want to keep it very secure. In that case, you can use a property over here, protected $table equals, and here we can mention up that my table name is this, right? Right now it is post. Even if I don't write, it will work. But in case if you want to explicitly mention up that this is my table name, then we can use this variable table, and you can initialize it with the table name. Now this post model will be mapped with the table name mentioned inside the table variable. Okay, we want to insert a record inside the database. How are we going to insert it? So remember, first thing, this is post table. So post model and post table. I have not defined any column name over here, right? It is not required. It is not required. You will set the properties of the post model, and those properties would be mapped with the column names. So you can assume, for now, you can make an assumption that yes, model is aware of all these columns, right? Because you would be defining them. When you are going to save your model, you would be defining them that, okay, my post title should be ABC, post content should be, let's say, XYZ, status is draft. All those details we can mention up. Okay, let's try to create one post record inside the database. How to create it? So for this, we are going to web route. Okay, and I'm going to write a quick route over here. We'll not create a form for now, just we are going to understand how to save the data inside the database, right? So I'll write a endpoint which will call in the browser, and that browser will just make the request to this route, right? There isn't any form, etc. for now. So here let's write it as get okay. So here we have the route get, and I'll call it as post. Okay, remember this is not the correct convention to keep a get route to create the post. It is just I am giving a demo part. Later on we will make a full-fledged end-to-end flow of how we'll first access the form. Through the form I'll submit the data, and then we'll validate it, and we are going to create that post, right? So right now it is a demo. I'll write it as well, demo endpoint to create a post. Okay, so now route get post, let's create a function over here. Okay, do not forget I'm creating the post over here. I'll use the post model here, but this is not the right place. We have already discussed we'll create the controller, we'll create the views, etc., everything. Okay, so now I'm going to this, if I'm calling this post endpoint, this post endpoint is going to create a new post model, right? A new post object. So the first step is create a new object for your model. So the table in which you want to insert the data, you have to create the object for that particular model, which is corresponding to that table, right? Mapped with that table. Okay, now post is created. What are we going to do next? We are going to set the attributes for the model, right? So what are the different attributes we have to set? Remember, nullable can be skipped, but all the other not null fields we need to set them. So here I'll go for post, and post, the first one is title. So title, I'm going to write a demo title like this is a title for my post. Okay, so that is my post title, and then I have to set the content equals, this is dummy content. Okay, fine. And what other fields we have? Let's quickly check in the database. Title, content. I have not set ID. The reason is ID is a auto increment column. Status is by default having the drafts value, and created at updated at will be update like generated, right, with the current timestamp. Image URL will be null for now. Okay, we have only set two fields. Let's go and call this post, and I'll call the save method, right? So what actually is happening over here? You created this post model. Think that post model, as soon as you create the object of the post model, the database connection is created, right? Now when I'm setting the attribute, that means I'm passing the value to the post model, and when I'm calling the save, so it is generating up a insert SQL query, insert into post table, values would be title and content, and then it is running that query, right? That all work is happening in the background. So as soon as I call this save method, right, post object is created, attribute is set, and save method is called. So the library is going to check that whether the post model is having table mapped. Yes, it is, and the table is existing. Okay, once it is checking, okay, table is existing, fine. Now it will look for whether there are attributes like title and content. So these attribute means the column names. So it will check, is it having the title and the content? Yes, it will set these values to those two columns, and it is going to save, means it is going to run the insert SQL query. So here I am going to return up a message saying post created successfully, right? Post created successfully. So let's go and run this endpoint. For this I need to check whether my server is running. Yes, and we will go to open this page, right? And the page name is, page endpoint is post. Okay, we got some error. The error is that image URL doesn't have a default value. Might be we have not kept it as a nullable field. So I'm going to check my database migrations. Right. So here I have created up a image URL column, right? But I have not kept it as nullable and I want to change it to nullable. So what is the best process? If this whole changes, if all changes are deployed on server, I'll not make the changes in this migration. Okay. So what should we do? We should create up a new migration. We'll follow the standard. We'll assume that it is deployed on my, let's say staging server or some testing server. So I'm going to make a new migration, PHP artisan make migration, and column name is update column image URL table post. Now why I'm writing this kind of lengthy name? Because I want that if I'm looking at the migration, I can have some understanding what is kept in what code is done inside the migration, right? You can make it shorter version also, no problem. Hyphen the flag would be table. Don't write the create flag. Table name is post. Okay, let's quickly go and update this image URL. I'll copy this whole thing. Table is post. We need to change this column, right? We need to change the type of column. Type means I'm going to change it to a nullable column. I also need to add the change, right? Also, here some people get confusion. If you are following the documentation, that is good. If not, they start removing this nullable, right? This will not make any change. Try to use the nullable over here and then keep it as false. Okay, so this column was nullable and this column is now kept the nullable as false, else it won't make any changes, right? So we have made the column as nullable. In the rollback we are making it to the not nullable. Run your migrations, PHP artisan migrate. Fine, migrations I have executed and we are going to run this endpoint again, and you can see post created successfully. Let's check in the database, and here you can see the ID is 1 because it is auto incremented. Title we have set, content we have set it from our code. Status is a default value. Image URL was nullable. Created at and updated at are also set by the library, right? Whenever you are using this save method, right? Save method to save any record means you are creating an object, setting the attribute, and then you are calling the save method to save the attributes mapped into the column. It will update the created at and updated at also, right? If we want, we can remove these columns created at, updated at. We have to make some changes in the model. We'll do it later in the advanced part. Ignore it for now. Okay, so this is one step. Now, so one way of creating the record. Let's say I want to do some lesser work. I don't want to do this much of work because might be I have like 20 attributes. So I don't want to set at 20 attributes one by one. I just want that the way it is coming from request, I want to save it directly in my model and to the database. So another way if you want to do is, you can use the post model and call the create function, right? So here if you see, you are doing it assignment of attributes one by one, right? Assignment of attributes one by one. So instead of doing this part, we can say that, okay, let's suppose if I am getting the data from somewhere, data equals to title, some title and content, some new content for new post. Okay, just dummy data I'm picking up. So suppose if you are getting this data from request, we have not yet used the request. We'll use it when we are going to create a form and a like complete end to end. We'll see that there will be a form, we'll submit it and the record would be generated, right? So we'll do it in the next session. Today we'll only understand how to save the data. So here I'm generating up some data, right? Some data, and I want to save this data inside the post table. Okay, easier way, use the post class, post model, and call the create method. Okay, and pass the create method, pass the data to the create method. Done. Your post is created. You don't have to set it one by one manually. Let's remove this part of the code. I'm going to comment it for now. Okay, your post is created, and you can return that post is created successfully. Now you can think of that, okay, here also we are saving it one by one, like we are setting one by one title and content. Here also we are passing the data, but remember, this data, fetching this data can be easier, because once you go for writing up the request, so let's say if you have the request object, you can fetch all the data, right? So assume you were using request model, request object, you would have fetched all the data. So that makes it easier. Fine. So you fetch the title and content from the request and then pass that payload to the create method of the post model. Your post would be created. Let's run this thing and see if the data is saved inside our table. Okay, let's go to the browser. I'm going to run this once again. Error. Right. There is nothing wrong with the code, but we need to follow one property, because you are doing up a mass assignment. Earlier you were assigning it by yourself manually, right? Title was assigned to the title attribute, dummy content was assigned to the content attribute. So now you are passing all the fields, the key and the value pair to the create, and you are telling that, okay, assign it yourself, create a record and give it to me. So now Laravel is saying that, okay, you have to take care of fillable property, right? You have to take care of the fillable property. So here we are going to write protected $fillable pass an array. So in the fillable property, we are going to pass all those fields for which we are going to pass the mass assignment, right? When we are going to pass the bulk data. So here title and content, right? So these are the two fields which we are passing as a mass assignment. We are passing it to create and telling that, okay, create, just set this data in this particular attribute, right? So we have to pass such fields inside the fillable property. Refresh your page and your post is created. Let's go to the database, verify. So here you can see the first one we created where we have set the attribute and then call the save method. Second one, we saw how to create the object using the fillable property, right? We set the fields inside the fillable and pass the payload to the create method, and then your model is creating the record. So these are two different ways you can create. Now suppose you have to insert multiple records, right? Multiple records. So assume that there was some text file you have to import, right? Or sometimes we may have to insert multiple records. So here I'll present the multiple record format once. Let's go and save this. Okay, I'll copy it. Multiple records. Okay, so if it is a multiple record, so I'll have more than one post. Okay, I'll copy this and I'm going to create it over here. Okay, so some title 1, some new content for new post 1, new post 2, right? Some title 2. So now I have two posts to be created together. So your create method won't work, save method won't work, right? Because these are two different records. One option is you put a loop. Okay, you put a loop. So you are going to write it as $data as $post. for each, and then here you are going to write it in this format, right? But here then there will be 2 times it is going to run the insert statement 2 times, right? Which is not a good practice, because if you do such kind of work, there would be some extra insert statements running on your database unnecessarily, right? We can do it in a single statement. So how to manage it? Okay, for this we are going to call the post insert and we'll pass the data, right? Post insert and created successfully. So let's go and quickly check this. Save. I'm just verifying if there isn't anything wrong. Okay, let's run it. If there are any errors, we'll fix it at the real time. Okay, I have refreshed it and we'll go to the database. Okay, here you see record number 3 and record number 4, but there is one point: created at and updated at is not updated in this case, not generated in this case. Whenever you are using the insert method for multi-record insertion, right, then you will not have the created at updated at. So do take care of those fields, update it here also, right? There are other method also to generate the created at updated at. We'll discuss it like advanced part again, as I said. So here we saw 3 different methods to generate our records. One using the save method, second one using the create method, third one using the insert method. Okay, so that's all for this session. Next session we are going to create a form, right? See that form with the get method, fill the data and then insert that data inside the database, right? After completing that, we will be fetching the data from the database to see the output, like generation, creating of the posts and then listing of the post and then editing of the post, deleting of the post. After that, after creating this create, retrieve, update and delete the CRUD, we will go for the validation. We'll see that if I have a form, I'm submitting on the server side. From the server, the validation needs to be done, and then if the validation is failed, it should redirect the form back on the post creation form. Okay, so all these things we'll see in next couple of sessions. That's all for today. Thank you everyone. Bye.